Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. Believe it or not, I actually started today's show, not by design, but exactly on 2 o'clock. All the stars are aligning. I think we're going to have a great show today. Welcome if this is your first time hanging out with us. Hi, in fact I saw a Tony M Live is here for the first time. Lovely to have you join us. Hello to all of my regulars. Linda is in the house doing our moderating, and as always I encourage you to be kind and supportive to one another. We're all on this journey of learning to sing, and here at Voice Essentials we are a community of like-minded singers who are passionate about our voice and about each other's voices, where this is a supportive space. So welcome along. If you're watching this as a replay, hi, how you doing? My name is Dr. Dan. We're going to have a special guest a little bit later on, and David Sisco is his name, and he is a great guy. I've known David now for quite some time, and we've had many a chat, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you to him. When he comes on, if he looks a little bit bleary-eyed, it's because it's I think it's past midnight in New York currently where he's from. Hey, while you're in the live chat, let us know where you're from. What is the weather like in your part of the world? We've got people from all over the globe that join these shows, and it's always fantastic to learn where you're from and how you're going. Just before we dive into the show, just a few housekeeping things. Just a couple of pieces of news around Voice Essentials, and you'll see going across the bottom here a link to voiceessentials.com.au, which is my online course. I wanted to let you know that at the end of June, I am doing a 40% sale for Voice Essentials 1. It is going to be a 40-hour end-of-year financial sale. I'm going to let you know ahead of time, just in case you were thinking you were going to buy it. You can buy it. You can buy it right now. But if you hold off a little bit, you are going to save some serious dollars at the end of the year. So at the end of the financial year, I should say. So it starts June 29th and will run for 40 hours. 40 hours only. So just wanted to let you know about that. Hey, also, for those of you who have been asking, I go into pre-production. The first pre-production meeting for Voice Essentials 3 exercise collection. So another 15 more intermediate to advanced exercises. We start pre-production for that July 1st, Monday, July 1st. And then I'm hoping, I'm hoping that we can release that September, maybe October, but we'll see how we go. Don't want to cut any corners with it. Want to make sure we deliver the best we can to you. So I'll keep you updated as that's coming along. Hey, the next live hangout will be next week. Of course, as you know, we do it weekly, and we'll do a Q&A next week. So make sure you're writing your questions down. For those of you who do have questions, make sure you write them all down, and Linda will collate them. If we've got some time at the end of today's show, and you've got questions for David, we'll try and answer a few of those for you if we have time. Otherwise, we'll do a full Q&A next week. The week after that, I'll be taking a break, a 1-week break, and then we'll be back on the 8th of July. But just letting you know ahead of schedule. And in fact, I'm doing a pre-record interview this Friday with Dr. Gillian Kays and Jeremy Fisher. They are from a school called Vocal Process, internationally regarded pedagogues, this couple. And again, I've known Dr. Gillian and Jeremy for a long time. And so I'm going to be doing a pre-record interview with them. They're from the UK, so we've had to do a pre-record to sort of make our times meet. And I'll be presenting that in July sometime. So just wanted to give you an update as to what we're doing here at Voice Essentials. There is always something going on, and part of that is these wonderful guests that we have come on the show. And today is no different. You are going to be you are going to really enjoy today's show, and with our guest David, who I'm going to introduce you to right after this.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
Oh, I'm a bit slow on the uptake. Hi, David. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well, thank you. Good to be with you.
It's so good to have you on the show. And as I said, we've known each other. How long have we known each other for, David? It's been.
The first time I went to Australia was probably.
Was it for ICVT 2013?
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah. So it feels like we've known each other a bit longer than that, but. That's coming up on 7 years. That's
because we're old souls.
We are old souls. It is so good to have you on the show, and just so people know, hey, we had Brian Gill on a couple of months ago, and Brian, yourself, and myself, and Dr. Irene Bartlett, we sat on a panel together about it was a funny panel to sit on. Yeah, I see the grin. It was a funny panel to sit on. It was about belt. We might touch on belt a little bit later.
Right.
Yeah. It was a bit like that, wasn't it? That group.
You know, just to. It's funny because I'm actually, I'm coming to Australia in a couple days, and I am talking about legit mix and belt singing and training the new triple threat. And one of the things that I mentioned about that particular panel was that we were all, first of all, everyone was so, I think, generous and had really great things to say, but just had different vocabulary.
Yeah.
And so I think it was called something like the elephant in the room, and there was absolutely no elephant. So it just made for interesting theater.
Yeah, we I think there was an attempt to sculpt an elephant, fashion an elephant out of the mismatched terminology, but no, I think it was done in the right spirit, and we got.
It ended up being really great, and I'm so grateful to have. I mean, anytime I get to be with the ANATS community and over in Australia, I'm super happy. So I just feel like it's a group of really smart, caring, involved, passionate people who are open to hearing other points of view. And to me, that's what your community, that's what you've built, and so that's why I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's I'm just seeing your audio level there, mate. It's not at your end. I'm going to see if I can just lift your audio up a little to see if we can get a little bit more out of you.
Sure.
So, I just want to let me bump over to here. So this is your website. I just want to give people a quick squiz at that. And dear me, we can't mistake that it's your website. Because there you are.
You're reminding me that I need to update my picture.
It might be a younger you.
Slightly younger.
Oh, and look,
slightly more hair on the top of my head.
We've tweeted out. There we go. We're up there in all our glory for today's show, which is fabulous. But look, the thing I wanted to really direct people to is this vast list of tabs across the top, which really speaks to the breadth of your expertise, David. Composer, performer, writer, teacher. There is so much that you do, and the reality is we're not going to be able to even begin to scratch the surface today, because we are going to sort of centre in on music theatre particularly, and voice. And singing, but I do want to direct people to really check out your stuff. Have you got anything on the website that you would want people to go and really have a look at?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'd love for them to check out the teacher section. They'll find out a little bit more about how I teach and how I think about teaching, my philosophy and my experience. And then the composer tab has a lot of a lot of music that I've written, not only classical music, art song, but also a lot of musical theater, choral music, and whatnot. So if you get a chance, feel free to pop by and listen to some of my stuff.
Yeah, awesome. So let's and people can certainly do that. There's a link, everyone, in the show notes below today's video, so you can certainly go and check that out, and there will be great reward for those who choose to do so. So you're coming to Australia, the great land down under. In fact, you leave in a couple of days, don't you?
In a couple of days. So my boyfriend Albert and I leave Tuesday afternoon, and we get there Thursday morning, as you do.
as you do. Yeah, most flights get into Australia really early. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be the way.
Yeah, well, I think we get in at like 7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you always feel like death warmed up when you step off the plane, don't you?
It is a lot, and I don't sleep on planes,
Yeah.
so I'm just in it.
Yeah.
And I was like, you may want to have me come a couple days before I have to speak in public.
Be seen in public. Yeah.
Just in case you want me to say something intelligent, that would be probably great. And everyone's been so gracious to to give me a couple days to get my feet wet.
So what are you going to be speaking to when you come down? Because you're speaking at 3 different events.
Yeah, so the first one is Annette's Victoria, and it is that's June 22nd and 23rd, Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday it's a whole day dedicated to classical art song, which like never happens anymore.
Yeah.
So glad that we have this day to really talk about what's happening in classical music for the voice and how we can support our students in preparing for that reality. Their master classes in the afternoon. And then the second day, Sunday, is all about musical theater. And so we're doing I think what will be a really fun audition workshop, getting ready for talking about how to audition well. There's so many things that we can kind of help us get into the room and make smart choices before we even open our mouths to sing.
Well, let's use that as a launch into our discussion today, because audition, and in fact this has been a very very recent discussion that has been in the Voice Essentials Facebook group. For those who are never watched this show before, we have a Facebook group. You're more than welcome to join it. Wonderfully supportive community. And one of the questions has come up has been around auditions. What do you feel? What are the things that you like to empower your students with in regards to preparing and auditioning well?
There are, for me, 2 sides to it, and I'll try to condense. The first is that you have to choose smart material for your audition. So if I have clients that are going in for a particular musical, we talk about what is the musical world of that show. And how can we pick repertoire that tells the people behind the table that you understand the world into which you're being asked to step. And so that's a big thing. That the next thing is that take it another step is how can you pick a song that is not only in the musical world but also feels like it's relevant to one of the stories that's told in the musical. So I'll give you an example. So Book of Mormon, incredibly irreverent, very funny musical. I had a student at Wagner College, Kevin, very talented guy, and I knew just by his look, he was going to go in for Book of Mormon. And I was right. He got a call his senior year to go in. And I said, you need to sing this song. And it was called Taking It All Off for Jesus. And it is this hysterical song by my dear colleague, Rona Siddiqui, who is a phenomenal music director in New York and also a great songwriter. And it was perfectly matched, not only in musical style, but also in the style of the character. It gave the flavor of the character. So to me, if you have those two things, that's really ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part. It's just kind of the prep of like, what are you actually singing? The second thing is, how are you and who are you showing yourself to be in the room where it all happens? So many people lose the people behind the table before they even sing by virtue of how they talk to the pianist and how they slate. Slate is how you introduce yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And also the moment before. My amazing colleague, Laura Josepher, with whom I run contemporarymusicaltheater.com, we wrote a book called Mastering College Musical Theater Auditions. And we talk about this a lot, about the moment before, the where are you, who are you talking to, what do you want?
Mm.
It's these three things where people lose the people behind the table. And so taking time to rehearse what you're actually going to say to the pianist, how you're going to introduce yourself to the people behind the table, and what is that moment before that you can pull up quickly to activate yourself as a singing actor. Because that activation is your breath. That activation is what's going to help you not only sing well, but communicate well.
Mm.
And so I talk a lot about how to kind of break those down and prepare for a successful audition. Because if one of those three things does not go well, or if you don't do one of those things at all, you're not going to set yourself up for success. So I think it's really empowering actors, singing actors, or singers in general, regardless of what the audition is, to go in and to be able to see the parts of an audition and practice those. So when you're in the room, it feels like just a natural expression of who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this goes beyond music theatre. Personally, I think that when we're talking about, and this a statement that I know everyone in the community here who is regular to Voice Essentials is probably sick and tired of hearing me say it, but it is a founding ethos from which I teach, and that is great singing is not about perfect notes; it's about communication. And
Yes.
that's across the board. It doesn't matter what the genre is. We don't. Some of our favourite singers are not the best singers in the world, from a technical standpoint, but they often are fabulous communicators. And if you can get beyond simply learning what I hear you saying, David, is if you can get beyond the dots on the page and remembering the lyrics. So basically learning the melody and learning the lyrics. If you can put that behind you and step into the essence of what you are presenting, you'll go a long way towards a successful audition.
Absolutely. And there are people who perform very well who don't audition very well.
Yeah.
You have to learn, they're different skills in
Yes.
some regards. And but it's so important, and I love what you're talking about, because the way I describe it is, we as singers are ambassadors of hope.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you, we live in a dark, frustrating world. And people come to the theater, they come to churches, they come wherever they hear music, on the subway, on the street corner. They stop and they receive because they are transported they are moved beyond where they are. They are asked, the performer asks them to join them on a bridge that couldn't be built any other way. And so that's our job as artists, to build that. And that's, to me, that's why we talk about technique.
Yeah.
Is so we have the ability to do that. I love technique. I want to be singing till I'm, I mean, God love my grandfather. He was 104, when he died. I want to have a long life, and I want to be singing for all of it, but, and I think technique will help me do that. But that's not the only reason we study technique. It's for that communication.
I often illustrate technique as being like a subterranean river that we want it, we need it to be there. If that subterranean river dries up, then there's no life above it. But when it flows well, when it's really well replenished with beautiful spring water, it gives life to everything above it. For the most part, we want it to remain unseen. We don't want it to break through the surface and people go, oh, wow, we can see this wonderful subterranean river. But equally, it must be there in order to serve the very thing we're talking about, which is the communication. And
I think that's what's really hard today. And we've I think, had this conversation before that, we live in an age where, here's my iPhone. Do you want to know what the temperature is in Barcelona? I'll tell you in like 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Which is so not what we do as singers. It's so about taking it apart. It's all about process.
Yes.
And for my young singers that I work with, that's the first thing that I have to remind them of on a daily basis. But that's the process of what we do. But that's also what ends up moving people.
I wonder whether you'd take a moment just to go back to a point you made, and recognizing that some people don't audition well. They can be fabulous singers, but they come to that moment of audition and things seem to go a little haywire for them. Have you got any encouragements? I know you will have some encouragements to those people. What do you generally do with someone that really struggles with that point of assessment?
I think that, well, I can speak from my experience that anytime I have met my inner saboteur, it is because I'm not on my breath. So just on a technical level, chances are, if that's happening, I need to focus on my breathing. So that's just technically the first thing that I talk about with my clients. But I think it's also, I also talk about, in singing, we have to have great awareness around what we're doing. But oftentimes that awareness becomes judgment. And we have to figure out, we have to be really kind to ourselves and figure out how to delineate between those two things. If I walk out of an audition room and I just bombed, I can say, okay, well, that didn't go well, but I'm just going to let that go for right now. And later on in the day, I'm going to journal about it. I'm going to write down what went well. That's the first question I ask all of my clients. What did you do well? And it always throws them for a loop, even if they've heard me ask it about 100 times, because they're like, that's not how we're wired.
No.
We're wired to go with like, I did these 90 things wrong and I am a horrible human being. Right? So we have to start with, what did I do well in this situation? And then what do I want to improve? And a lot of times, I don't have to tell you that in the studio, so often we're dealing with so much more than technique. We're dealing with the emotional underbelly of what people are coming up with, like the choir teacher that told you were being too loud, and it just, squashed something in you, and you have to unpack that.
Yes.
And it is not my job. It's not our job as voice teachers to become therapists in those situations, but to highlight those things and say, look, the work that we're doing is not just about the technique. It's not just about the voice. It's also about kind of the spiritual and emotional work that goes with it. that brings it life.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Singing does have this uncanny capacity to unearth things that may have been buried deep within one's psyche, and suddenly a person starts singing lessons, and it's exposed in sometimes all of its graphic detail, and you're quite right at those points. If it becomes apparent, then we direct people on to people who are far more qualified to counsel people through those issues when they arise.
Just a very quick point on this, because I think it's important. I had a very negative experience during my graduate degree, where I left really feeling as if I was not worthy of singing in public. It was incredibly painful, and I found over the years following that anytime I had to sing in public, I would always get a sinus infection. It took me years to realize that this was psychosomatic, that I actually was sabotaging myself. And so that was something that I really had to work through. And I'll tell you, the one thing that solved that for me in a large way was actually admitting that to myself in front of other people, especially my students, having that conversation with them and being vulnerable and saying, look, this is what happens to us singers. Sometimes we sabotage ourselves, even though we love doing what we do. There's a part of us that is so afraid. I mean, we are constantly working against fight or flight. We all learned about fight or flight, and when we were growing up, right? And we're singing completely flies in the face of that. We're just saying, suppress all of your better judgment about what you should do with your body and with your breath. So we're constantly fighting that, and so to admit that to oneself, and to say, I've had many practice sessions where I've literally had to go, ooh, okay, so you're feeling this. This is happening. You're having these feelings. They're feelings. They're going to just pass through, and they do not own you. And you get to continue going on and continue expressing what you love doing.
Yes.
Right. But I think that's really important to admit. It's important for me to talk about, because I think I hope it empowers other people to realize that they are not alone. So whether it be an audition situation or something, some sort of technical or otherwise hurdle that they're having, that's something we all go through.
Yeah, and one of the most rewarding sessions was during last year's ANATS conference, was your keynote, and where you talked about that experience that you'd had, and I think it really spoke to a lot of people. And the room was filled with singing teachers, people who do this for a living and observe other people going through the process, and yet so often we as singing teachers ourselves need to consider these things. I wonder if we can. Thank you for bringing that up too. I think that's an important thing for people to hear. I wonder if we can talk to the practicalities now of, when it comes to you. In fact, you mentioned earlier finding that right piece of audition material, and really accounting for, regardless of genre, perhaps. So even thinking beyond. Wider than just music theatre per se. What advice do you have for people beyond what you said earlier about choosing that killer piece of audition material that's going to really grab people by the collar and want to have them listen and want more?
Well, I think the first thing is, of course, you have to understand the difference between range and tessitura. So range, of course, is the what's the lowest note, what's the highest note. And I have so many clients that will bring in songs regardless of the genre, and they're like, oh, look, I can hit all these notes. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But the problem is the tessitura may sit too high. And the
Yeah.
tessitura is where the song mainly sits, right?
Yep.
So
The mean average of notes. Yeah.
yeah. So for instance, I'm a baritone, and hitting a G above middle C is not a problem for me.
Yeah.
But if you give me a piece that sat at middle C and above for long periods of time, I'm going to get cranky.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of picking out songs, one that really fit your tessitura. I think that's the first thing. Also, understanding that there's a big difference between songs you like and songs that are good for you. I find this a lot, again, especially in musical theater and pop rock. People who bring in pop rock songs, they may love the song, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the right song for them. And a lot of times, especially in musical theater, we talk about type. What is your type? How are the people behind the table going to see you? This is true in opera as well as it kind of goes across the board. And again, going back to my amazing colleague Laura, she talks about, we put out an image to the world when we come into the room, and it is our job to complete that image by virtue of what we sing. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't then surprise them in the second piece and be like, by the way, I also do this, right? But it's a way of saying, we are very clear about how you're seeing us. And I think that takes some time. That takes time talking to your voice teacher about the repertoire that's right for you. It's also talking to acting coaches and people who have a drama background to get that sense of who you are. Always fascinating to find out how other people see you, because it's almost never how we see ourselves.
Very true.
I always wanted to be the leading man, but it's really not how I would be cast in a lot of musical theater situations, I don't think. So I think that plays a large part in it too. But also finding things that you're really passionate about, especially if they're off the beaten track. Because I do a lot of auditions in New York, play them and sit behind tables in them and watch them. I see the same 30 pieces, which always shocks me, because there is so much repertoire out there that's really good. That's that will get you heard, I think, in a different way than if you had done Gimme Gimme from Throw Them Out or Millie, or kind of the standard pop rock or the standard opera aria, whatever it is. There are things that you can find that will really speak to you, that are completely playable by the pianist, that will get the people behind the table to be like, oh, wow, I've not heard that in a hot minute. I'm so glad you sang that. Thank you so much.
I haven't done anywhere near as much auditioning as you have, in the sense of sitting on the panel. But for when I have, it actually you pay closer attention, because you suddenly you go, oh, thank goodness we're not listening to XYZ that we've just been listening to for the last 3 hours. This is fresh. It's different, and so it shouldn't be like this, but the people sitting behind the panel are all human, and we all do kind of get sort of, driven into a sort of a stupor. It sort of knocks you out of that, and you're able to be more present and more engaged, and it becomes, even if the performance of the piece is even a little less, zingy than perhaps the last one, it still remains present of mind because it was different.
Yes. And here's the thing. Almost every time somebody sings something that I don't know, I'm like, what's that from? I certainly don't know all the repertoire, but I know a lot of repertoire. And so if you can surprise me, I'm going to ask you what it's from if I don't know it. And then we're having a conversation. Right? This is a way to stay in the room.
Yes.
Right? And to really give people behind the table a sense of you were telegraphing without saying a word look, I'm a smart performer, and I know you've been sitting behind this table for a long time, so I'm going to give you something new and exciting. And this is why I founded contemporarymusicaltheater.com. It's a website that's dedicated to contemporary musical theater writers and their songs. We represent over 180 writers, over 600 songs now, I guess it is. All different genres under the colorful golf umbrella of contemporary musical theater. And because we're a subscription site, we allow the writers to get 100% of the sale price of their songs when people buy their songs.
Wonderful. Stepping away from, so I think that's a good segue, actually, what we've just talked about with.
I was hoping it would be.
Thinking about where do you think music theatre is headed? Where do you think, because the one thing that the internet has given us is the ability to proliferate, and one of the positivities of that is that we've got this wonderful vehicle that gives us the opportunity to widely sow our seed, but equally the challenge is that it's almost overwhelming the amount, and your single piece or your audition or whatever becomes this little speck of sand on a beach.
Sure.
Where do you think this music theatre thing, and I think we can probably become more focused on music theatre now, where do you think it's all headed, David? With your globe, your wonderful soothsaying, yes.
It's a really good question. I mean, I think what is exciting to me is if you look at this year's Tony nominees for Best Musical, they could not be more different. Like Hadestown, which won the Tony for Best Musical, and The Prom, Tootsie. All of these musicals are wildly different in completely different styles. And to me, that's really exciting. It's really exciting. It means, of course, that there's greater demand on the singer to be able to sing in all of these styles, and maybe that's something we can talk about if there's time. But I think that there are lots of opportunities for lots of different styles of music on Broadway now, and I think that has been a slow evolution since Hair, or even before. That's been coming down the pike, but I think now we're really seeing it happen. I also think that of course, there are a lot of adaptations of movies. That is a huge thing that's happening in musical theater that we have to contend with. If one likes it, great. If one doesn't, okay. I think that there are movies that are turned into musicals have wildly varying rates of success. Shows like Tootsie, which rightfully won Best Book for a musical, probably the funniest book I've seen in over a decade in a musical on Broadway, reimagined the movie and made it really work on a stage. And a lot of times that doesn't happen with other adaptations. I think also what's happening in contemporary musical theater is that there's a hunger for diversity. I think there's a hunger now, and it's been very slow, and I think there's a lot more work to be done. But thanks to Lin-Manuel Miranda and Hamilton and other shows of the like, there is a hunger for diversity to make sure that the everyman in the story is not the white, straight, cisgender man. And to me, that is very exciting, both when reviving work and when creating new work. So we're seeing Ali Stroker, who is just such an extraordinary performer and human being. She just won the Tony for Best Featured Actress in a Musical. She is she's disabled. She's in a wheelchair. She's the first disabled person, actor with a disability to be on Broadway. And so we're seeing this, I think this change that's happening, this hunger to show lots of people's experiences, not just one person's lens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So where do you think then it's headed vocally? Because we've seen this real change, and I think it's probably been it's been longer than 20 years, but definitely over the last 20 years there's been a real change in the expectations around the voice. I think music theatre has always been an elite sport, as far as the vocal athletes that need to participate. But where do you see it currently, and where do you see it going?
It's a really good question, and I mean, what I see is I see two things. I see really smart performers who are taking expert care of themselves, either with the help of the creative team of the show or in spite of the creative team on a show. And, several years ago I presented this presentation called Vocal Health on Broadway and Beyond, where I compared how vocal health issues were both prevented and treated on Broadway, in London, West End, and in touring productions in Australia. And what I found was pretty much across the board, save Australia, thanks to our colleague Deb Filand, who is very active in helping actors stay safe with the help of producers in many of the touring productions there.
I'll pass on your. I'll be talking to Deb tonight, so I'll pass on your happy report.
I adore her, but a lot of singers are just having to find their own way and really try to take care of themselves. And the problem is that our ears are so strong. We are able to mimic things really convincingly. But when we're mimicking, we're creating a sound that is born out of tension. And that's what I see a lot. I see a lot. It's happening a lot. Boy, can you tell it's getting late? Yikes. That's what I see is happening a lot on Broadway. Young performers who are singing the style rather than finding the style in their body and in their technique. Those are two, to me, very different things. And I hope that that's something that for performers who want to have longevity in a career, I hope that that's something that they're really thinking about, because I think we need to figure out how to sing in lots of different styles while realizing the places that we're going to in those styles are not nearly as far away as we think. And this is why I love Brian Gill. We've talked about this many times, with his amazing background in voice science. We're kind of reaching the same conclusions about how close style is to each other in an aligned voice.
So let's become even more specific with that. Let's talk.
Say that again. Sorry.
Oh, we're suddenly getting a double up. Can you hear that? Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's become even more focused now. Let's talk about the voice that does need to or wants to move between those legit belt, lengthen a dominant. Let's talk about these aspects if we can.
Sure. So
part of the problem.
Well, just hang on a second. I don't know what's going on with our connection. Can you hear me clearly?
Sometimes a little in and out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're getting a really funny digitization of our. Maybe the online bots don't want us to talk about it. It's a conspiracy.
Rude. They're like, no, don't talk about that.
This is not okay.
Shall I give it a shot?
Give it a shot.
So, so these modes of singing, I think we talk about, part of it's a terminology or labeling issue, is that these different styles of singing are, in the relative scheme of things, kind of new, in terms of how we're thinking about them. But they've always been around. If you listen to the native music of any culture, you're going to hear some legit singing, you're going to hear some mix, you're going to hear some belting, right? So I think there's confusion about terminology. And I think the best way to start is by looking at what are the commonalities between these three modes of singing. We need breath flow through released vocal cords. We need to use a nice, honest, forward, right, for me, I call it a forward, right sound. And we need our resonators. And regardless of what we're singing, we need to have those things in place. What happens, though, is when we sing in different styles, we often will sacrifice one of those three things. We'll start to mess with the airflow because we want more of a pop rock sound. And so we feel like we need to, and sometimes we're not even conscious of this, we're altering the airflow because we're going for a particular sound. And again, this is where the ear kind of gets us in trouble. Or because we've stopped the flow of air that we need, we fall back into throat resonance. So I think it's looking at the commonalities between these different modes of singing and making sure that, too, I work with my clients as I'm warming them up, which is not a warm-up, it's vocal conditioning. As I'm working with them, I'm making sure that they're singing in all of these different modes as they're getting to warm up their voice. So their body says, oh, I can make this orchestra of sounds. And these places, again, are not so far away from each other.
I'm still listening. Can you?
So, for instance, like when I work with my legit singers,
yep.
A lot of times I find that the language tends to live a lot further back, as does the resonance. And so I help them point the language more forward. Again, a brighter sound. This is really beautifully, I think, illustrated by Renee Fleming. She did a master class at the Nats conference in 2016, and there was a baritone, lovely baritone, who sang I già vinto la causa from Le Notti di Figaro. And he started and said, I già vinto la causa. And she said, can you just say that for me? And he said, I già vinto la causa. And she said, yes, that's where you need to sing it.
Yeah, right.
That finding the natural resonance and the natural forwardness of your voice, and not trying to make it something else because it's a style. Because I may get in trouble, not with you, but with some people to say this, but classical music is a style of singing. I think a lot of times we put classical music here, and then we say, and here's pop, and here's musical theater, and all these other things. No. It's all silos next to each other, and they're all equally beautiful forms of singing. So I think it's in each of these modes there are misconceptions. In belt, it's that if I constrict the breath, I'm going to be able to get the sound that I want. Not true. I mean, you may be able to get it, but you're going to get it in a much more effortful way that is not sustainable. And for me, I'm not interested in good or bad sound. To me, that does not exist. It is what is sustainable and what is unsustainable.
Love it.
And if something is not sustainable, we have to talk about why that is. And in belt, it's usually because the breath gets locked because they want to find this particular sound.
Yeah.
And so, especially with my high belt mixers, helping them find a released high belt mix, they always like say, no, that cannot be it. It's too easy. And I'm like, I mean, that's sounds like high belt mix to me. Like if you want it to be harder, like I'm sure we can make it harder for you. but you know, why do you want it like that?
Well, kinesthetically, we develop a mental setting of how it should feel, and more
Yes.
often than not, we come to expect our body should feel like it's working harder than it needs to, and so that becomes our setting, and so we judge the sound against that physical response, don't we?
Yes, yes. And and just to kind of close the loop in mixing, I find, people who are trying to mix are singing off their voice and not mixing down into their chest voice.
Mm.
It's ah, and it just disappears.
Where'd
And so
it
it's
go?
really, there are no root to the sound, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times helping people mix, I'm really going to the chest voice and saying, okay, how can we find the forwardness, the natural resonance of the chest voice, and bring that into your mix?
Mm.
That same sense of airflow. Of course, there are register transitions that one has to make, but the sound, like where we place the sound, if it's a forward resonant sound, that doesn't have to alter to me. Like it's pretty much the same. It may feel different from place to place, but it's pretty much forward and resonant. And once you're in that place, you can easily go, I talk to my clients about saying it's like, instead of saying, all right, I'm going to hop from this room to this room to this room to this room in this house, I say, can you just build a hotel and have one open atrium that's just up and down? So it's not like I have to find all of these separate places in which to sing. It's all one place.
And therein lies the development of technique, because it is technique that gets you there. When
Absolutely.
we talk about closing loops, it's I think where we started our conversation today, because it is as simple as you're saying, but I know you would agree that doesn't necessarily make it easy to achieve.
No, because that release that one has to have is vulnerable. Who wants to do that?
I wish
Right.
I could remember the pedagogue who gave me this story, or gave the room this story that I happened to be sitting in when he or she told it. But it was basically a very simple concept, and that is, most of us as adults, in the use of our voice, are trying to return to the innocence of use from our childhood.
Yes.
The difficulty of that is we are trying to do that with this collected bank of knowledge and understanding about what we're doing now, and that cognition of process, but yet we're trying to get back to that easy, free, innocent release of phonation that we used to bound through the house singing at the top of our lungs with free abandonment. We're trying to get back to that.
Yes.
And I've always remembered that, because it's so true.
It's so true. It's so true, Dan. And I think a lot of us think we can think our way there.
Yeah.
And again, that's the difference between awareness and judgment.
Yeah.
I love having the pedagogical knowledge that I have, and I'm so hungry to keep learning more. I never want to stop. But when it comes to time for me to sing, I gotta know how to balance that information and
Yes.
not give myself a voice lesson while I'm performing.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do.
It's super hard. And we watch in our studios, we watch students and encourage students along that specific journey every day of the week, don't we? And it isn't an easy thing to do. And I certainly wouldn't want anyone watching today to walk away feeling burdened by the suggestion that it's easy. It's a very simple concept, but it's not necessarily easy to achieve. I've just looked at. Sorry, go.
I just wanted to say it's a different kind of work.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we find the ease of singing, it's just a different kind of work.
Yeah.
Usually it's effortful in the wrong way. It's effortful here, right? And then when we're actually supporting our sound and releasing it, it's like, oh, holy mackerel, what are these muscles in between my rib cage, and what's happening with my lower abs and all of this stuff. This is like holy mackerel, right? We have to kind of recalibrate.
We
once
do.
We realize that type of work.
Yeah, love the term recalibration. It's good. I've looked over at the time and realised we need to finish.
Oh yes.
Because
sorry.
No. It's often the case with my guests that we could talk, infinitum. And I knew it would be a challenge with you because we have already had these many opportunities to talk, and we've got this. It's all too easy for us to continue chin wagging, but we do need to bring it to a close. But in closing, I want to just give you an opportunity. Is there anything else that you just wanted to briefly mention, or something you've been thinking you'd like to say as our conversation has progressed?
Yeah, I think that we should all be keeping a journal while we sing and write down things that come up, whether they be positive thoughts or negative thoughts. Because the more that we do our work as human beings, the more we are going to be able to do our work as communicators of song, whatever that song may be. And it will allow us a vulnerability that will truly be a gift to someone who is desperately in need of what we have to offer.
Yeah, I think over the years I've noted that journaling is a very powerful tool for some, and it certainly gives people that opportunity to stop and reflect, and to consider and to observe what they're experiencing and what they're thinking. Yeah, very powerful tool. Thank you for your time tonight.
So much.
What time is it in your part of the world?
It's 3 to 1 a.m.
Oh, what's past midnight amongst friends?
The night is young here.
You're in the city that never sleeps.
Exactly.
So I don't know what all the fuss could ever be about. It has been a pleasure. I knew it would be, and we are fortunate down here, down in the great land down under here in Australia, to have you visiting us again in a couple of days. I don't think you and I are going to get to see each other in person, but you are going to have the opportunity to see the closest of friends of mine, Sharon Tree. She's going to be seeing you in Canberra, and so I know you'll enjoy your time with her and the rest of the gang down in Canberra. There's such an active group in Canberra, so I think you'll really enjoy your time down there. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us and just sharing and being so generous in your thoughts. Music theatre, it can be quite a political space, can't it? It's in.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you for being so open and generous in grounding and owning your thoughts. I think that's an important part of the process, and so I really appreciate you doing that. We might I might just sign off, but we'll just wave you goodbye, and so thank you very much, David. So there you go, everyone. A fantastic discussion. Music theatre is not something we really talk about a lot here on the channel. And I do have students in my studio where we teach, where I teach a bit of music theatre. Mostly I teach pop and rock, so it's great. It's great to have someone like David with his level of expertise in the field to come in and just share some insights and some of his knowledge with us. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Don't forget, we're going to come back. As you can tell, we're not going to go to a Q&A because, dear me, the time has run away from us today. We will do a full Q&A session next week, so be sure to join in. Subscribe to the channel, hit the white bell notification icon so that you can always be reminded of when we're going live. But it is always Australian Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. on a Monday. And so I hope you'll be able to join us then. Hit the thumbs up button before you finish off. But as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next Voice Essentials video. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.